Hello, beautiful human. This is Wild. I'm Zach. That's Dan. And today we welcome to the studio for the first time ever, Mr. Fogerty. John Fogerty is here because we have a whole brand new... It is not a new album, but it is a new album. It is a whole reimagination of your records, but they're very true to the original, but built with your family. And it's very, very, very cool. You can listen to the whole thing on Amazon Music. Why now, though? Why now for an album like this?
Good question. Well, I'll go back a ways. I would say a few years ago, my dear wife, Julie, had told me one day, she had a feeling or a sense. And the way that I kind of remembered it is that she said she had a vision and it was filled with joy. And as part of that experience that she was just sort of imagining, I had re-recorded my old songs from the Creedence Clearwater time. And so she, was telling me about that, it kind of maybe suggesting or asking, maybe kind of an elbow in the rib, And I think my stance at that time, this is several years ago, was, well, honey, that's a nice story, But I think my own personal leanings were toward not doing something like that. I've, over the years, have, like all of us, I've had my own musical idols. And some of them have actually, as time passed in their career, done that move, re-recorded the songs that were the ones that initially made them famous. And many times those things, I remember the first time I heard one that was disappointing. I won't say any artist names, but and in those days, by the way, you had no access to music unless you actually went to the store and purchased an album like that.
So you do a lot to just get let down.
Yeah, exactly. And so you bring it home because it's not on the radio. You just, here's the greatest hits or whatever, right? And you buy it and you bring it home and you put it on, you go, oh. Well, then as time passes, I'm talking about years and years and, 20 years, 30 years, many artists, especially country artists, tend to do this, especially they have a hit career on a certain label for several years. Then they switch labels at some later point in their career. Perhaps the guy that I wrote the song Lodi about, and they go to a new label and the new label wants them to re-record all the songs that they had done on the other label, right? It seems to be a syndrome, particularly in country. Anyhow, so it actually becomes sort of a careerism that re-records are sort of a career move that people do, but you put it on and it goes, ouch,
But you're doing it differently, right?
Well, what I'm getting at is, so when I heard the idea applied to me, I kind of went, is that reaction. Anyway, but my wife's, what's the word? Her vision of it sounded so yummy, meaning she talked about it being a really joyful thing. And my wife is able to
manifest. I believe in that.
She manifests the universe.
Dude, you're a Taurus. I'm a Taurus. I'm with you. That's like the star signs?
I'm a Gemini, actually.
Oh, shit. You're on the late side of May. You just turned 80, right?
Yeah, I'm the late side of life. Hey, where's my songbook? There you go. Wow.
No, manifestation's real, though.
Well, she moves the universe. And so if we come forward a little bit, as you know, I did not own the songs from that era, even though I, wrote them all. It had been a desire all my life trying to get the ownership of my early songs back. And just kept running into Stonewall. Finally, just a few years ago, just a couple of years ago, a little more, Julie kind of took over that journey, that cause, that quest, and I guess I'd been pretty beaten. I mean, I'd had meetings with people and lawyers and guy, and I remember I came home from one of them. It was with a big honcho at Warner Chapel Music. I was hoping there was some way that it could be, because Saul Zaentz had agreed at a meeting with me and Bill Graham to sell the songs to me. But he was lying to get something else that he wanted. But anyhow.
Can we set the tone, though? Because you end up signing a record deal with somebody named Saul.
Yep.
And you're a minor at the time. Is this before or after you're drafted?
The ones the original Fantasy contracts were before, and I was indeed a minor. But by the time I got off active duty, I was a major. I was 21. So let's see, I turned 21 in 66. So after 67, whatever, I was an adult. And so that contract signed in January of early 68, I was an adult. So how can I say it? I'm accountable. I was 22 at the time.
And this is a deal that is famous because, correct me if I'm wrong, the label, this guy, owned or would own your masters and all of your publishing.
He would own all the songs in the future that I hadn't even written yet. Right.
And the way I understand the story is like somebody in the band had a dad who was supposed to look at the contract. And
absolutely right.
So what goes wrong? And
Zach, what goes wrong is trusting people. That's what goes wrong.
That's so scary.
Yeah. And I will say, in my year, I'm going to get back to this part of the story, but in all my years of, let's see, I was 22, so that's nearly 60 years on into life. You can have contract with, I mean, that's why they take so long to get figured out and then signed. And there's still ways, if one party of the two parties wants to screw you, they'll find something somewhere, some little reverse of the language. Well, look, we're watching it every day in our life.
Totally.
When we turn on the TV and see our Constitution and the things that we think we understand is America, we're watching it get perverted every day into something backwards from, I sound like one of those people, but it's true.
It's totally accurate.
If they want to find a loophole and they really are devious enough,
they will.
Yep. So it turned out in somewhere around October of 67, the change was Saul Zaentz, who had been the sales representative at Fantasy, had somehow gotten together some people to help him, and the people that owned Fantasy wanted to sell. So now Saul was going to buy the company, and he hands me a contract and says, here, you guys look this over and then come back and sign it. So the four of us that are in the band, that as of that moment, I think when it got handed to us, I don't think that I'd come up with the name Creedence Clearwater Revival yet, because we had that contract in our possession probably for a month and a half or so before signing it. Anyhow, so we have a meeting, the group was practicing every day out at this place in the country that Doug and Stu actually lived there. We called the place the Shire, and we would, every day about noon during weekdays, we would have a rehearsal for maybe 2-3 hours. But we always started out we'd meet just before noon, sit down and have a cup of coffee and talk about what's going on. So at that one of those, after I had this contract that none of us really could, we're not lawyers, we could barely read the thing. It's so full of whereas the party of the first part, insisting, anonymity, and persecute of the something or other party of the second part. It's a big whirlpool of language. So we decide, since Stu's the bass player, Stu's father is a lawyer, matter of fact, an entertainment lawyer who represents some famous singers. I think one of them was Johnny Desmond, was a singer, some other folks that I'd heard about, but also the Oakland Raiders. So that was probably their big client.
That's huge.
So we in the band, we vote to have Stu take the contract and have his dad look at it to find out if it's all right, if it's on the up and up. And we're really amateur, newbies, don't know anything about the style of what contracts are and the process that happens before a contract is signed, and probably in all walks of life, not just entertainment. But of course, the biggest thing that happens is a contract gets formed, let's say on one side, if it's a contract between two parties, whatever it is. On one side, a contract sort of gets formed by that side's lawyers, and they pass it to the other side and their lawyers, and immediately the people on the other side start coming up with changes and all that. And so it's what they call negotiations. And yes, we're going to get $10 for every widget we sell. And then the other side says, no, we're only going to pay $6 for every widget, and you negotiate until you arrive at something.
Why didn't Stu's dad do that?
Okay, so we give Stu the contract. We go on with our life. We meet every day. We're rehearsing. We have a few gigs.
Are you writing records too at the same time?
Yeah. We're this would have been about October, November, December of 1967.
Wow.
It's during the same time, Christmas Eve of 67 is when I come up with the name, Creedence Clearwater Revival. That was actually the first real move. I don't want to get off subject, but the name was way better than the band at that moment, matter of fact. But anyhow, so our life is going on. We're questing, to try and find our way somehow up somewhere on the mountain of a career. And one day it's a Friday, I believe, we're loading up our little microbus, a VW bus. We called it the Do-All van because it said Do-All Floor Company on the side of it. D-U-all. I think A-L, actually. The Do-All van. So we're loading equipment, getting ready to, it's probably 4 o'clock, 4:30 in the afternoon. We're going to drive somewhere up in the Central Valley to some sort of engagement. And at some point, somebody says, hey, somebody remembers, hey, Stu, what'd your dad say? It's just kind of casual because it had been a while. And Stu goes, well, what did Dad say about what? And somebody else says, well, the contract. Yeah, what did he say? What'd your dad say about the contract? And in a little pause, like this sort of, it's telling if I'd been looking. But anyway, he says, oh, Dad said it's all right. Or, what do you mean it's okay? It's okay to sign. And we all, oh, yay. It's like SpongeBob. Suddenly all our hands come up and hey, because that's what we really wanted. And we didn't care about the details so much. We just, we want to sign. Yeah, that Saul's a good guy. We like him, right? So we notified Saul after New Year's, after I came up with a new name and all that. And we go in and there's a contract, and we didn't even read what at that moment. I just remember we went in, there's the contract on the table, and we signed the contract, all four of us.
Stu's dad never read that contract.
See, doesn't it kind of look that way now when you,
And this.
But for years and years,
Stu,
I couldn't, my emotions about, because at that moment in time, this was very early 68, right? we were just starting to work on creating the first album. And so at that point in time, we really didn't know that me, John, would end up being the main songwriter. This is kind of a different subject, but the whole idea was everybody's going to write songs and come up with music, and we're this democracy. I've gone and said it. We're a band, we're musical democracy. Those three words actually don't go together. They really don't. But you don't know that yet until you are trying.
When did you realize it?
Right about this time, after the contract signed.
Holy shit.
Well, we're moving along, and I would be showing up at rehearsals at noon, at these meetings and rehearsals. And basically the idea was everybody going to write songs, right? So I was home and I was busy and I was serious. And, well, anybody got anything? And suddenly the other guys would all look at their toes, Okay, well, here, I've been working on this thing, and I'd start showing something with an E7 chord in it and everything, We'd spend the rest of that afternoon working on this part of a song that I was figuring out. And then, next day would be the same thing. Literally, after a while, I stopped asking. I just started showing because it was pretty clear nobody was... It wasn't the intent. It just wasn't there.
What was their intent?
Well, I don't know. I actually don't know that one because I started working really hard, writing. So, this was when we get talking about legacy. There was a phrase I used to use after the first Creedence stuff started making it, and I always said, it's because it's life and death. This is a matter of life and death. And so I was willing to stay up half the night, till 3, 4 in the morning writing songs, even though I probably could have thought of something else to do. I was a kid, but what could be more important than my whole life? So
nothing.
Yeah. So that was what I was doing.
Why did you feel obligated to keep going to them with these ideas? Could you not have done it on your own?
Oh, well, Zach, okay. Well, are we not married? We're a band. We had said we were going to do these things.
Real, I get it. That's loyalty.
Well, we had committed, all for one and one for all. I remember that was one of the things we had said. And so it didn't happen this early yet, but there was a point a little later as it got past the summer of '68, which is when I wrote Proud Mary. Went in the house, started strumming on my Rickenbacker, started playing these chords I'd been playing around with that was kind of reminiscent of Beethoven's Fifth. Din, 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 din. Dun, 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 dun. My mom used to do that from Winston Churchill. That meant victory, by the way. It didn't mean peace like it did in '68. But
that's so interesting, by the way.
Yeah, but
how time changes a symbol, man.
Yeah, but that was World War II. It was Churchill, and they'd always dun 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 dun, and he would do that, and it was about the war. It meant.
Death, by the way.
Victory.
Yeah, which was equivalent to death.
Well, it was because it was Beethoven's Fifth, 5, Roman V.
Oh, interesting.
Right? Oh, yep. So, I don't know, all this stuff's kind of cosmic. Anyhow, started doing this rhythm and this thing, and I'm, making these words up. First words I actually write are, left a good job in the city, working for the man every night and day. Well, that was how I felt. That was the army, right? So I started strumming and stuff and pretty quickly come up with this, out of nowhere, this thing, rolling on the river. And I'm like, wow, what is this? So I go to this songbook I had begun just after I got off active duty in '67. And I opened the songbook, and there, the very first entry, the very first words I ever wrote in that book is Proud Mary, right? It's the very first line of the first page. And I look at that, and something I didn't actually realize until the last few months that we've been working on Legacy. I've looked at the book a few times again. The bottom of that first page is the word riverboat. And so I looked at that thing. I must have passed over, and whoa, Proud Mary. It's the name of a boat. It's a riverboat. Oh, wow. I mean, because who writes a song about a boat, right? Anyway, so I'm off, and I tie it together. It's got the Mississippi River in it, It's about escape, about feeling good, about going to another place. Everything's going to be fine after all the struggle and stuff. And it's got rolling on the river. And when less than an hour had passed, and the song was probably every word except for one or two. I mean, it's literally 95% finished right there. And I'm looking at that, and I realize it's a great song. I have I could walk down the street, knock on Hoagie Carmichael or Irving Berlin or John Lennon's door and say, hey, man, look at this. I mean, I knew it. I just knew I had done it.
How many songs do you think you had written until you got to that?
Oh, in my whole life?
Before you got to Proud Mary? Hundreds.
Didn't mean I finished them all.
No, but they were...
But I certainly was... Yeah, I started writing songs when I was 8. So... time would go, I'd write a song. I'd be banging on the piano and write a little, or I'd be standing, I was on traffic duty in the 6th grade, and then you walk out and you hold a sign and let the kids cross in the crosswalk. And I might be standing there writing a song, is what I'm saying.
But when you sing it today, from what perspective do you perform it?
I think, am singing it from the young version. I think that my original inspiration for it is what I react to now. Okay. So I think that's what my record, my album Legacy is actually all about. As you know, as the world knows, Creedence went along, had a pretty fabulous career there for a couple of years, but it kind of started to turn sour fairly quickly after about a year of success, of being truly euphoric and just magical. I mean, how many people has that happened to?
And it happens so quick. It happens really between you have 3 prolific years where it's just like, there's nothing to really compare it to because it's.
And by the way, that was by my design. It wasn't somebody else holding the tiller or cranking the engine. It was my design because I wanted a career and I didn't want to go back. I used to say go back to the car wash. But what I really didn't want to do, I didn't want to be a gollywog again, and to have the shipwreck on the rocky shores of the one-hit wonders, you might say. And so that whole thing that happened when it started really Proud Mary. I realized I had crossed into that land, and that had never happened before. I knew it was truly a classic.
Did you have a bunch of songs written and then release them would you just write and then release?
Yeah, the release was the motivation for the write.
Interesting.
Oh yeah, I would tell myself literally, the second album, which is really where Proud Mary, let's see what else, Born on the Bayou, it's where those first great songs are located, and the album's music, my arrangements had really grown up. That was recorded in late '68, so it was released on January 6th, I believe.
Wow.
It was released in the first week of January '69. But that by design, I put Born on the Bayou and Proud Mary on the same. Back then, you were ruled by the product, which was a 45 single.
And it
45.
was two sides.
Yeah. You had two sides, so you had to have two songs. And so your mind was geared to that. Now, most people, most record companies, most artists, most musicians, they'll have the thing that they really believe on the A side, and then they were always told by their manager or whatever, well, don't do anything on the other side. That's just filler. Don't waste it. Except...
You changed those rules.
Well, it wasn't actually me. I was imitating and learning at the knee of a couple of other artists. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to put the very best I had on that single, right? My idea was give the fans the most music you can give them. A single was a special, precious thing. The single, by the way, at that moment in time, the single was still king. The album was only just kind of starting to be the thing that defined a band, but that didn't happen until about another year or so. Probably Led Zeppelin. Well, you could say Sgt. Pepper. We were starting to think about albums as being the thing. But there's been a whole long rock and roll history of the single. Anyway, obviously the Beatles had two good songs on a single. Both sides were A sides most of the time. Elvis had done that quite a bit until later in his career, but in his earliest RCA years, the years where he was Elvis the Pelvis, the king of rock and roll, both sides really mattered to those in those two artists' case.
You end up owning the charts more than you can own it in numerous different positions. You grab attention, it made sense, and it allowed you to release quickly.
Yeah, it's funny how those things work. It seems like the forces of gravity are always trying to push you back downstream, So Creedence became so amazingly successful, and there would be it was my goal to never fall off the chart. So I was trying to put out a new single, double-sided, before the last one fell off the chart. And so it managed to stay, I think, something like at least 2 years straight, never having fallen off the Hot 100, the singles chart. And in those early days, you could have Down on the Corner and Fortunate Son both in the top 10. And
it happened.
But then Billboard kind of got wise, said, okay, it's on the same record. From now on, we're just going to give them the same number. So we didn't get two different spots. We only got one spot. It was like...
Oh, interesting.
The consolidation. The same thing happened, I think, around 1970, 69, 70. Creedence was so clearly driving the jukebox market at the time. So they were going to give us the award for most popular jukebox artist, right? But Johnny Cash was also pretty big. And so for the first time, Johnny Cash is the biggest artist, and Creedence is the biggest artists. Plural. It's like, okay, it's a tie,
That's what an interesting time, the jukebox.
Yeah.
Well, by the way, you would have many, dude, Center Field was another one of those records. People would play the living shit out of that on jukeboxes.
The other side of that is Rock and Roll Girls, if I can remember right.
Again, well done. Just well done.
Yeah.
You lived Fortunate Son, right? You lived that song. So that's another thing that would be kind of derived from your experience of being drafted. Because regardless of what people think and what commercialization has put on the record, it is a protest song against the draft and Vietnam. And it's this idea that rich kids and powerful kids don't have to do this, but those who don't have those means.
Well, here's something that's really important to understand. Okay, so I went through my military experience, before there ever was Creedence. And I came home. I actually was mustered out of active duty right into the Bay Area, San Francisco, in 1967, the summer of love that you've heard about for 50 some odd years now. And I was, I grew up in the Bay Area. I didn't come from some other place and, be sure to wear some flowers in your hair. I had grown up there, and so I had I was part of the culture that was there already.
Totally.
I think Bay Area, San Francisco, obviously fairly liberal, a kind of a left of center leaning attitude. And of course, my mom, I'm getting off here a little bit, but my mom was a big folk music enthusiast, so I grew up also with those leanings, and particularly Pete Seeger, who is my idol. I mean, in a lot of ways. So anyway, so I'd been in the military. I come home. At that time, I'm thinking probably now I'm back to my real life, and definitely part of what, I almost never met a real person who called himself a hippie. It seemed to be sort of a Time magazine invention, but yet jokingly, because we were all young, it's just the power of being young. It's the mindset of being young. And of course, that means all the rest of the world is pointing their finger at you and in that sort of looking down, that condescending way that they let you know that you're not doing it right, whatever it is. Because all young people, they know they have the power, and yet they also have that guilt trip of the old people looking at them and saying, you're not doing it right. And you're looking back and say, well, you sure didn't do it right.
Real.
So we all, young people, and I was one of them, considered ourselves in that generation, hippie or whatever you want to call it, right? But of course, all young people who were in that situation were very much against the war, and it got this thing got used later very well by the government, and it wasn't getting used too well at that time yet under Richard Nixon, of trying to put the blame on the soldiers, right? And so, but the people that were around me who were just free society, you might say, were certainly blaming the soldiers. Anyhow, I was a guy that had a different perspective because, now I'm a hippie. I didn't wear flowers, but I think I wore beads at some point. And I wore, usually wore work shirts. I didn't wear tie-dye. I don't know if they had even invented tie-dye yet. But my friends would all be, talking about the war, blah, 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 and they would, curse, soldiers and grunts, whatever they called them. And I would always this would be my line, my typical, because suddenly I would get on a bit of a soapbox and say, you're just wrong. Do you look over there? Do you understand? Especially in airports when we were traveling, you'd see guys in uniform because everybody was, how can I say it? The Army was all being shuffled around on commercial planes till they got to their base, you might say. And so you'd see a bunch of soldiers, and I'd be with my friends or be with my band even, and they're pointing out the soldiers, and I go, don't you understand? That guy's a kid. He's 19 years old. Everything he likes is the same stuff you like. He likes all the same music. He feels the same about his government. He feels the same about this frickin' war. He's 19 years old. He just happened to be unlucky like I was. He got drafted, and now he has to do that. That was the point of view or the insight I was allowed to have because I'd been in the military. So that's exactly what is informing or giving the energy to my point of view, particularly in Fortunate Son.
Is there any part that's like, were you nervous going back and like re-recording any of these records? Because in their, like, there is something to the original form, right? To your original point. Were you nervous at all?
Well, I certainly apprehensive. Oh, look, the first reaction really was that specter of, I mean, so many people have done it kind of badly.
Totally.
I don't want to be one of those, right? I mean, how can I say it? Not by design, but let's say by accident or by, what is it? By the logic of numbers. Eventually, you want to be perfect, but eventually you're going to F up. I mean, no one is perfect. Human beings are not perfect. I mean, the simplest way to measure that is, have you ever heard of anybody finally becoming a success in showbiz, and then it's just a straight line? They're number one for the rest of their life till the day they die, and they never make a mistake. No!
It just doesn't exist.
Right. So I sure didn't want to do what, to me, was already notoriously sort of a fall down, to re-record. But then a few years ago, Julie did that manifest thing.
Yeah.
I had been trying to get the ownership of my songs back for my whole adult life, and been told they're not for sale. It's never going to happen. Give it up, John. Forget it. And Julie,
she manifested it.
That's right. And there were people that literally said these songs are not for sale. Lawyers told her that. People at record companies said that, and others, advisors, that kind of thing. And Julie just, because probably part of it is the extra thing that women have to go through in the world of business anyway, in the boy-dominated good old boys club of everything. They have an extra battle to get anyone to believe them just because they're female. I think that may be part of it. She just kind of looked at that and she said, there's got to be a way. And also she was driven by, I'm her husband, I'm her love, she's my love. And she had that motivation that she'd say something like, I can't stand to see this guy being abused like this, right?
Well, by the way, like, that was my biggest wonder when I was really being downloaded on everything, was I was like wondering, like, how did you survive? Like, how did you make money for so long? Because the reality was this company, this guy, was taking 100% of everything. And then you didn't perform your own records for 15 years. So my whole thing was like, how were you generating revenue if it wasn't through publishing or through masters or through any of it?
Let's see. Up until 1980, I did receive artist royalties.
Got it.
And I also received the songwriter's share of the songs. I received songwriting royalties from sales and also BMI money.
Got it.
BMI is the people that collect from records being played, songs being played on the radio and all. That was the main place, but TV or movies or all that other stuff. And I had written quite a few songs that were top 10 million seller hit songs globally.
Yeah.
And how can I say it? So there even though, number one, I'm in a band, so the
Yeah, but you split it, right?
Yes, I did.
You had a pact with them. So then I was like, what?
Yeah, obviously as the band members, as artists, we split it 4 ways, and for quite some time, I split the songwriting with the other guys too, because there was a moment in time, I think at the end of 1969, I realized I had written all the original songs that the band had, and nobody else had written any songs. And I was still splitting my songs that I wrote 4 ways, right? And so we were quickly arriving at a point where everybody in the band was going to become a millionaire. And I figured that was probably a watermark it would be, no one's destitute if I make this move. I said, look, I think from now on, if I write a song and I think I should get 100% of my share of the song. And everybody seemed to be okay with that. But I said, at that moment, I think I said, but I'll still split all the songwriting on the next album 4 ways, so that no one. So there was still a future, I guess, to the agreement, right?
You're a nice guy.
Well, I think I was overly generous, perhaps, or overly fair. There's that word, that democracy thing, because what happens in a band, if you are truly a democracy, you cannot come up with a decision about anything, because everybody starts changing it and arguing, and if there's no strong leader, it's kind of like a dog chasing its tail all the time. I think old-time managers will laugh at you if you say, oh, our band's a democracy, and they'll kind of knowingly go, oh boy, how did I take this one on? Because someone has to decide, well, are we getting there at 4:30 or 5?
Was anyone making those decisions for you?
I was. Eventually,
Yeah, totally.
Number one, the contract was a bad decision. I didn't make that decision. That was a democratic decision that 4 people made, right?
Fucking Stu, man.
Well, I think what I'm saying is that went screwy because somebody should have just said, let's check this out more. There were a few more decisions like that in the months after that just my common sense began to sort of, I would react to things, and it seemed like the guys weren't thinking it through all the way. And I guess it's kind of like jumping off the Titanic and you're in a lifeboat and there's 4 of you. And at first you're just glad to be in the lifeboat,
Totally.
But eventually, let's paddle that way. No, let's paddle that way. Well, eventually someone, I think, if you survive, someone starts to kind of take a firm hand and go, I think I see a tree growing over the horizon. Let's go that way. Is
there any part of you that wish you just did this on your own?
I don't think I've actually ever allowed my psyche to go that far. I mean, you have to here's a big one. So all the shit hit the fan. I think we were earlier talking about this. And the band survived for another 1.5 years or so in a really sour environment. Really, now people are kind of jealous of me. We'd be in an airport, some little kid run up, and he'd want my autograph. John, can I have your autograph? And I'd sign his thing, and then he'd take off. He didn't ask the other guys for, which I could actually kind of rude, I think, because we're all standing there. But as we walked a little further down the airport, I hear, behind my back, that kind of thing. And so the atmosphere started to get charged with that emotion that sort of, it's not fun. There's a what do you call that? There's tension in the air. So, the early times when these songs I wrote during the Creedence years ended up mostly not being happy for me, other than that first really golden year.
But even that, like you'd find a hit record in that animosity, that negativity that would brew and be bred between you and your bandmates, because that's where Have You Seen the Rain comes from.
I literally wrote that song because my band was breaking up. I truly believe that it was after that meeting where everybody said they wanted to write their own songs and invent their own musical parts and sing those songs. I could just see the thing disintegrating from what we had been before. And that made me really sad. And it seemed like everybody was grumbling all the time about unhappy they were. And, we had achieved our highest dreams. I thought that we should be very happy. And so the metaphor to me was, so, every once in a while in nature, you'll see a stunning blue sky with the sun out, and yet because there's a cloud way over there that you can't see, but the atmosphere is blowing that rain over from that cloud and dropping it on you, you're in a sunny day, but it's raining on you. And that just seemed to describe how the band felt. So I wrote that song. By the way, the band did not realize
it was about them.
That it was about them. No. I have various clues over time, one of which I know that Stu at some point 20 years later said, well, Have You Ever Seen the Rain was written right on the spot. Well, no, it wasn't, because if we're all in the studio, we didn't write a song about the band breaking up. I did that at home. Wow. It has surprised me. I just think it's a joy that song now is so popular. I believe it. It has 1 million or 1 billion streams, and I think it was the first of my songs to receive that honor. Because I think what has happened is, as I describe sometimes to my audience when I'm playing live, I think they sense a rainbow. I think even though it sounds forlorn, I think they feel that there's hope and there's a rainbow in there. And I think that's what, perhaps I was feeling that when I wrote it. Perhaps I was hoping that would happen. But I sure feel that way now because the audience, we love to sing it together. Wow. It's a truly wonderful experience for me when I'm playing shows live that everybody sings that song. It's great.
Do you hear it in your head before you play it?
Yeah.
Sick.
I got to, well, sometimes it happens the other way. There's muscle memory. And I was just doing this morning. I play guitar every day, hopefully in the morning before, I'm needed somewhere else. I actually literally the same thing. I'm so deferential to this thing that's magical to me. I'm messing around. I know the chords. I know the strings. I've got a certain tone. And then something happens, a sort of but right there's the difference between me and probably the next guy sitting in the next room. I hear that little thing happen and I go, it's not complete, but that's the beginning of something, because that was kind of cool right there. What is that? And then if you're standing outside my door, like I have a feeling my wife does this sometimes. When that moment happened, those things, and I go, wait a minute, I hear, wow, yeah, that's cool. Maybe the same note would be better played over here. So you go, wow, and you figure out the fingering, and you go on, well, what would be a whole, and you suddenly, in other words, that thing has pulled you in and you're creating, and I do it automatically. I had heard something that sounded like it would be a thing, I guess, a repeatable phrase. And so, it'd be the same for a guy that writes poetry. He'd come across a couple of words in the right order and he'd go, wow, that would turn a certain, make a picture. Well, I'm doing this with music. I'm sitting there and I make that thing happen. And before you know it, if I'm lucky, I've got a little deal that goes, or whatever, all the different, or, it was, I think it was John Lennon that did, I think John made that lick. I've grown up thinking that those are the coolest part of a record, when there's a cool guitar lick, just because I'm a guitar player. So
but it works. Like a lot of your records start with insane guitar and it catches you. Fortunate Son just grabs you.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Is there also anything to the time of your records? Because Most of your hit records never exceed 3 minutes and 10 seconds.
I hope to always keep it that way.
Susie Q is like 4 minutes and change.
Yeah, well, Susie Q was conceived differently, though. It was conceived as a tape to be played at actually the world's first underground station, KMPX in San Francisco.
Sick. By the way, it would become a hit, right? It peaked at, I think, number 8 or something. So
yeah, but that was the whole idea. They were playing, of course, the Grateful Dead and Quicksilver and the Airplane and all that sort of thing. But every once in a while, that station would actually be playing a tape that was like they played the famous Janis tape, her singing Hesitation Blues with Yorma, right? And somebody's typing their term paper in the background. It was just a tape they did offhand in their kitchen, but the station would play that. And it became something that people like to hear. And so that became the goal of Susie Q. You know, Susie Q was a song as a guitar guy I had loved since I first heard it in 1958. I believe I was in my mom's car and I started banging on the metal dashboard of cars in those days. I went primal. It just absolutely went right through me. So all my life I loved that. When we were on Fantasy, they had kept wanting us to do original songs. Well, clever businessman record guys is because they would own the songs, you know, original songs. If we did Susie Q, they wouldn't own it. But anyway, there became that moment that I decided that, you know what, let's not have me try to write an original song.
Do a cover.
Right? Let's take something I already know is great and let's trick it out and make it psychedelic. And that was the idea.
You do a cover of Susie Q, right? You understand the power of it. Proud Mary becomes a song that is covered numerous times. The most famous version of that, you would say it belongs to Tina Turner, right?
Oh, when I first heard the Ike and Tina Proud Mary, I just thought it was great. I was really happy. Wow, this is really great. No, I thought it was wonderful. I think that was my emotion really at the time. I'd been a fan of Tina for a few years. In fact, I mean, even as sort of, I think it was after high school, but Ike and Tina had a song called I Think It's Gonna Work Out Fine. And it had this really cool vibrato guitar intro that I really loved. Then Tina came in, you know, and I was always pulling for her, I guess you'd say. And I kind of, in my gut, I didn't understand why she wasn't a big star. And so when I heard Proud Mary, I actually felt like she's going to make it. She's made it. Cool. You know, I just thought it was a breath of fresh air, I guess.
It's the power to the cover, but also there's like very few songs that are created that do have the ability to take on totally new meaning based on the person who's bringing it to life. And Proud Mary is one of them. Susie Q's another. Like it's very powerful.
Oh, you mean when you can kind of change it or reinterpret it from the original?
Totally, to a point where it takes on a whole new perspective, a whole new story.
I like that.
It's very different. Very like even Proud Mary, like coming from Tina and Ike, like that's a totally different story. She's singing it from a totally different perspective, you know? She's not singing it from the perspective of somebody who was just released from the military.
Well, I think what I heard was that she sort of injected, especially doing the slow part, you know, my whole thing that I had tapped into with Proud Mary, the Mississippi River, Mark Twain. I mean, all these things are kind of unspoken, but they're, in a word, Americana.
Totally.
I mean, it was just, you know, I can put it this way. If I was to describe Huckleberry Finn, I'd say, well, you got this kid with a kind of a shaggy haircut. He's wearing a plaid shirt. He's got a fishing pole. He's running down by the Mississippi River. He's saying things like, rolling, you know, and basically I'm describing myself in a weird way being connected to Mark Twain or Huckleberry Finn. It's Americana, right? I think that's what I understood Proud Mary was that first hour, when I looked at it, it just surprised the heck out of me that I had never done that before. It was effortlessly plugging into the, what do you call it? The ether.
The larger zeitgeist.
Yes. Of what we all are, at least in our country, know.
Did you get a warning that she was going to?
No. Oh, no. It was a total surprise.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I just heard it on the radio like everybody else.
Shut up.
I just thought, man, that's great. Well, that's how we heard everything in those days, So I really wanted to emphasize the point that when things went south with Creedence, that was unhappy, and that was a new association for me, for things to be so unhappy that were music. And for all those years after that, I think you said something to me a little while, like, how did you survive or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, you survived it all.
I mean, it was a really crummy mental place, I can tell you, because not only, Saul got us involved in this offshore financial plan that basically stole our life savings.
Literally.
With it. Yep.
Like what?
So we were broke, and I still, if I wanted to record any more music, I had to give it to Saul.
So this is 1972, right? This is when Creedence disbands.
Yep.
And then 75 is your first solo album, but that would end up going back to him anyway.
Yes. Yeah, he would own that. He did own that. Every place else in the world, except for the label that I had transferred to, which was Asylum. Asylum had me for U.S. and Canada, North America, and the rest of the world was through Fantasies Associates, right? Anyway, I was just trying to say that the association in the beginning through those songs became a kind of unhappy mental state. And the new album, Legacy, is a very joyful state. And it's recorded that way, or it sounds that way, because I'm recording with, number one, Shane and Tyler, my kids, are in my band. Shane is a co-producer with me. Julie is kind of the overseer, the executive producer. And so there's just a different, it's kind of like bookends of the same thing, I guess. It's the new album reflects that joy that this music is made in. And it's, Zach, I can only tell you that years and years and years, I had a unhappy mental association with those songs and Creedence, meaning the artist and the time that those songs were created. And after I met Julie, especially after our lives developed, we had children and all of that, a life raising kids, going through school, and then recording. Oh, so why did I decide to actually even re-record? Because I had said, wow, that's sort of a bumpkin move, Well, Julie getting the songs back, my ownership of the songs back for me, really changed a lot of things. I want to say it changed everything. For one thing, the record company had to call me to ask me if it was okay to put Proud Mary in such and such a movie and that sort of thing. Because I, up until just a very short time ago, didn't own the copyright. Therefore, I wasn't the one in charge of the destiny. So the only thing I could do was hope to get paid as a songwriter,
That's crazy.
Yeah. So a lot of things were done I didn't agree with. A lot of things turned out to be really nice associations. For instance, I think it's Fortunate Son that's in, I can't even remember the name of the movie now.
I mean, dude, it's quite literally in thousands of movies.
Yeah. Well, anyway, the
Forrest Gump.
there you go. That's a nice association. I like Tom Hanks. Gotten to know him actually a little bit, and that's a cool movie. But Fortunate Son these days is, to a kid, I think, is associated in. You see a helicopter, you see the jungle. There's Fortunate Son, But way back when, Saul or Fantasy was saying yes to everything. So I think it's Born on the Bayou. There's a movie called Son of the Swamp Thing. And, right. Well, nobody asked me, of course. It's
like wild.
Anyway, getting involved, getting into the mindset that I was going, and you know what, honey? You remember your idea you had about re-recording those songs? Maybe that would be okay now. And I think Julie smiled. I believe us married people would call that a knowing smile, because I think, look, I have the utmost respect for Julie, and almost like, that kind of look, meaning, did you know this all that time? And what I'm getting at is, I started to get involved in re-recording. I know there's, I've told a lot of long stories, so I try to not make it too long. And at first blush, well, we got basic tracks recorded for quite a few of the songs. And those basic tracks were, really basic, just drums, bass, and rhythm guitar that my son Shane was playing. The drummer was Matt Chamberlain, and the bass player is Bob Glaub, and they're two musicians I really respect. They're great. And so they pretty much did their homework and did these basic tracks sounding very close to the, as far as the musical performance, sounding very close to the originals. And so at a certain point, a couple of years ago, I went in, said, all right, I'll go in and do a few and see what that's like. I think almost the first one I tried was Proud Mary. What I'm trying to get to is, so I walked in, I've been singing Proud Mary for 50-something years, minus a gap here. And I thought I was doing my best, singing. I did 3 or 4 takes, I guess. I didn't want to wear it out, but I tried my best. I brought my A game, I thought, I was trying my utmost. So anyway, the process continued. Did a few other of those vocals like that. People were appreciative, so, that sounds good, all that kind of thing. And then me and Shane and Tyler, and sometimes with other musicians, but mostly the 3 of us, started filling in all the other stuff, background vocals, other rhythm guitar parts. Let's say the part on Down on the Corner, it goes dun 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 dun. Needed something to do that. All those myriad parts. There's drums, there's maracas, there's all kinds of things. And the tracks started to sound really pretty good. And some, it's a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Somewhere along the way, I started going back, okay, I better look at the vocals here and and it was at that point, because the music was played, again, it's a varying graph, but it was particularly the vocals. I listened to Proud Mary again, and now that things were pretty up to snuff, I guess I'm trying to say, I listened to my vocal and I go, wow, only I can, if somebody else said it, I would probably go, hey, but I said it myself, wow, that's kind of lame. And it wasn't that it was lazy or bored or disinterested. What I knew from my own soul that guy is not life and death. His whole life is not depending on what he's doing here. And at about that moment is when I realized, but John, this fucking is life and death. You can't have this thing be out and it's lame like all those other people, right? I mean, some of our heroes, and then they re-record stuff and you go, oh man, why'd you do that? I mean, you're just disappointed. I don't want to disappoint anybody.
So what do?
I had to do it more.
You recut everything.
I saw this once in a Loretta Lynn movie. It was the movie about Loretta Lynn, and I think it's supposed to be Owen Bradley. And then somebody says, "Well, we'll get more musicians." And she looks around and says, "Well, there's already 7 musicians out there." And he says, "More better." And that's what I had to do. I had to be more better.
So what do you do? Like, how do you approach that?
I had to get my brain in that place where that guy was that sang that song all those years ago. I mean, Julie has told me she would look out and she could see it happening on my face. And I literally, I would calm myself, tell myself how important this was to me and why nothing else would matter. It had to be a gold medal or nothing. It had to be a world record time or nothing, right? It's life and death, and it literally is. And I would travel into, my whatever, brain cells, trying to find the reason I made that song and the way I was able to put all of the discontent, or what do you want to call it, distractions, out of my mind. The day I did Proud Mary in the first place, I sang a lead vocal, and then I had rehearsed the band, like a lot of bands, to sing background vocal parts. This was down at RCA Studios in Hollywood in late 68, October 68. And then the guys went in, they sang the, Rollin', and they did a version of it. We got them to be the best they could. And we listened back, and Proud Mary was the first great song I wrote.
Yeah.
And I knew it told a great story. And what the fellas were singing wasn't that story. It was, in a word, it just didn't sound harmonious. It didn't have that wonderful rolling on the, and I would try to explain, well, you have to explode, on that first, right? We had been through that. Anyway, so what I did is I kind of shushed them out of the studio. I said, I'm going to do that. Because I'd been doing that since high school when I first got a tape recorder that allowed you to, what they call bounce tracks. It was called Add a Track on this little Sony tape recorder from the...
You layered your own vocals.
Yep. Well, I had done it in high school, and I've been doing it ever since. And I knew exactly I knew what to do. It wasn't like, like looking around to see how it is. I knew exactly what to do, and I also knew what I was going to do was going to be much more harmonious. It's not just singing on tune. It has to warble together, perfectly. And it was life and death to me. This was Proud Mary. This is the first really good song I'd ever written, and I didn't want to fail just because something in the process was letting that down. Maybe I was overly protective. I just wanted to... Anyway, I stayed there at RCA and did it, and everybody was really pissed at me. Then I went and found, it was done. Went back to the restaurant where the guys were now having dinner, 2 guys from Italy. And, I'd never heard of that before. I guess it's kind of famous down here in L.A. But anyhow, they were really angry at me. And I looked at them and said, look, it doesn't matter who in this band gets the job done. It's us against the whole world. We're putting out a record that has our name on it, and it has to be really great. And it just doesn't matter if one guy or this guy or somebody else does it. It's coming from our camp. We have to make it the best it can possibly be. And I thought that that was understood and logical and acceptable. It turned out that that was actually just kind of a time bomb that kept ticking and ticking to where at some point it blew up and everybody kind of wanted, it was a grand mutiny at the end of 1970. Everybody wanted to sing their own parts, make up their own musical parts, write their own songs, and sing the song that they wrote, like the Beatles. So 2 years later, in 1970, I could see that it was either to be or not to be.
Totally.
The band's going to not be together, or I have to give in and say, okay, we'll do it that way from now on. But it's ironic after all that time, basically the way I did it from that moment forward made that big career. But everybody was angry about the way I did it. So it became that was the part that was chaotic.
By the way, can you just tell me what it was like working with Eric Church? Because you guys did a record together for what we're doing with NASCAR over our Prime Video.
Well, I've been a fan of Eric Church since back when I got to actually hand him, I was at the ACMs and I got to hand him an award. I was just knocked out getting to see him. I didn't know if he would remember me or not. And so all these years later, I got to do Up Around the Bend with Eric, and it's awesome. It's cool.
And it makes sense. I mean, how do you approach that genuinely? Like, how do you prepare for something like that?
Oh, I think if you don't. I think that would scare the heck out of you if you spend months like working up to it. You probably, no, this happened in a flash. It was like, hey, you guys want to do this together? I think yeah, sure, okay. And you get that done, and there you are. You're on the radio.
Did you cut your vocals together? Do you cut your vocals separate?
They were done separately.
Can you finish what you were saying about recording the album with joy this time and how you found joy in recording these songs again?
Yeah, well, I was kind of given that thought about life or death and putting myself into that place again. I wanted to say something about that. I truly think I've been on a journey or been given the opportunity to have a journey. I don't think a lot of people in the world get to experience. It's only been after these few months since Legacy's been finished, I get to hear it completely mastered and done, and also get to hear other people's reactions, them saying words to me like, wow, I hear the joy in this music, or wow, this sounds really fresh. I mean, it sounds like the original, but yet it doesn't. It sounds newer or something.
That's how I felt.
And that's the kind of the journey I went through myself as the guy singing the song and kind of shaping in the studio. Somehow that process, like I was just describing about Proud Mary, of putting myself mentally back into that space, and then suddenly there it is. It's like you're in a little kayak, canoe going down a magical river or something, and you end up in the same canoe that you were in 1968. I mean, you actually you feel like that. And Julie said she could see it on my face that was happening. And to somehow have that emotion, that persona, you might say, for that time while you're in the studio creating the music, I think it's just other. I think it's I don't think a lot of people get to go back after 50 years and put that other self on. It's them, but it's a younger person before all life's experiences. That was pretty special. And I know that my whole family felt that feeling while we were in the studio. I know Shane and I were able to look at each other because we're co-producers. And there were times when either he was playing the guitar and he was doing my lick, let's say Up Around the Bend, or I was doing the lick, Lodi perhaps, and he has to tell me, Dad, you're not doing that right. And he's my son and I'm 80 years old, and he's got to tell me, I think there's an extra thing on there that you did on the, and then we go listen, and hey, you're right. Unlike the bass player who wasn't able to tell his dad something, Shane was able to tell me, Dad, that you're not doing that right. That ease of just sharing the joy of doing it with each other, that's something else that happened.
That's so special.
I got to be a dad sharing my song, my musical riff or insight or way of believing, both to Shane and to Tyler multiple times in the studio to help all of us. Of course, they did it to me too, but to lift this thing and make it go up into some higher plane, I guess you'd say. As a dad who's had that craft for years and years, and then get to pass it on. I've always, since this experience, I've been saying it'd be like if I'm a shoemaker in a little village and it says Fogerty, shoemaker, and then now it says Fogerty and Sons, shoemakers. It's just a cool personal feeling to get to carry around.
You get to pass it down. It's really special. Listen to it all. It's waiting for you. There's a link below. Really quickly, secret to 30 years of a happy marriage. Is there one?
I just think you have to listen to each other. A person wiser than me once said, equal parts respect and lust.
Real. Quickly, how'd you come up with that?
Well, originally I came up with the idea, Willie and the Poor Boys. And I got that idea by looking at there was an ad in the newspaper. It was a Disney ad. Boy, I don't know what it was, because I don't know if it was a re-release of the movie or what. It was called a Super Poo Package. And I looked at that thing and I said, Winnie the Pooh and the Pooh Bears. He's a Pooh Bear. Winnie and the Pooh Bears. Winnie and the Pooh Bears. Well, Willie and the Willie and the Poor Boys. So I started writing the idea of Down on the Corner, and I thought that it needed an announcement, a riff, down on the corner, da-da-da-da. And somehow, along with that, I could hear a bass part, a guitar part going, boom, 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 boom. I mean, don't ask me where that comes from, but it seemed to be connected to the melody of the song.
It's perfect. So much of the music you craft is ripped from imagination, ripped from your life. It's this beautiful, perfect balance, and it's spread across all of your hits so equally. You're really a one-of-a-kind human being and artist. It's true, man.
No,
it's not bullshit.
I just want to sit in the lifeboat.
How do you want to be remembered?
Mostly I want to be remembered as a good dad, a good husband, a good family man, that was honest and kind. I think those are words I've used with my children a lot, to honesty is a very high thing. You should be honest. And kind, I think, is, we're not all able to do it all the time, but kindness, even when you're just, something's just making you red, purple in the face, there's something, the people around you that love you, they deserve to see you being kind. It's not always easy to remember that, but even though something might have just happened, makes you want to yell or whatever, don't yell at them. Be kind, I would like to be remembered that way.
Thank you for hanging out. I really appreciate your time and energy. You're really one of a kind, man. So I thank you.
Thank you.
Beyond, beyond, beyond. John Fogerty, everybody.
Thank you. It was great to be here.
Yeah, you're amazing.